Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to our virtual classroom. Today, we're going to jump straight into the assignment, as we don't do very often. And this assignment, of course, is for Monday, October 25th, and this is proportion word problems. Let us remember that the word proportion simply means equivalent fractions. All right, so fractions that, when simplified, are the same value, etc. All right, so with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and read the first problem and let's do a few of these together. All right, number one says, Mr. Johnson was paid $190 for a job that required 40 hours of work. At this rate, how much should he be paid for a job requiring 60 hours of work? The first thing that we must do in any of these problems, ladies and gentlemen, is identify the two things that we're comparing. Remember that a ratio is a comparison between two things. So what are the two things that we're comparing? So let's see what's important here to see if we can identify those two different things. So Mr. Johnson was paid $190 for a job that required 40 hours of work. Question, at this rate, how much should he be paid? So again, we have the word paid again for a job requiring 60 hours. So what are the two things that we're comparing? Well, let's look at the important information. 190 is what was paid. 40 hours of work. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems to me that we're comparing the amount of money paid to the amount of hours worked. Amount of money paid to the amount of hours worked. All right. Notice that there's no numbers there. I didn't write down any number. I simply wrote down a fraction in words, what I like to call the word fraction or the ratio in words. So the amount paid is anything in the numerator is going to have to do with the amount paid, and the hours are going to be in the denominator. All right. So what is the ratio? What is the comparison between how much was paid to the number of hours? Well, we have $190 paid for 40 hours of work. Okay. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's see if there's any other information about either the amount paid or the hours that we can use to make an equivalent fraction right here. At this rate, how much should he be paid? So we don't know how much is going to be paid for a job requiring 60 hours. 60 hours. Hours, 60 hours will also go in the denominator. Why? Because that's where I'm deciding to put hours, and I don't know how much is going to get paid, so I'm going to put a variable, a letter there indicating I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, writing this down is your first step. If you do not know what you're comparing, you need to slow down. You need to write down, what are you comparing? What is the ratio between those two things you're comparing? The amount paid for hours. And then we're building another fraction that we want to be equivalent to that ratio. Okay, now that we wrote this down, step number two, ladies and gentlemen. Step number two. We need to cross multiply. All right, so what I want you to do is write down an equal sign, because on either side of this equal sign, we're going to put our cross products, and we're going to cross multiply this 40 times x. So I'm going to write 40x on one side of the equation, 40x, and on the other side of the equation, I'm going to put my other cross product, which happens to be 190 times 60, 190 times 60. All right, I'm going to work that out. 190 times 60. So notice how I just took off the zeros. I'll add the zeros at the end. 6 times 9 is 54. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 5 is 11. So it's going to be 11,400 because of the two zeros at the end. Okay. So 190 times 60 is 11,400 is equal to 40x. All I did, ladies and gentlemen, is I cross multiplied. And on either side of an equation, I put 40x and 190 times 60 right here. Final step is to divide. We're going to divide both sides by the number next to the letter. So here's the letter. So I'm going to divide both sides by 40, because whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So x will equal to whatever 11,400 is divided by 40. So I'm going to cancel those trailing zeros and divide everything by 4. So 4 goes into 11 twice. We subtract 11 minus 8. That's going to be 3. Bring down the 4. 4 goes into 34. 8 times 2 times 4 times 8 is 32. We have a remainder of 2. Bring down the 0. And 4 goes into 20. exactly 5 times, meaning, ladies and gentlemen, that for 60 hours of work, he's going to get paid $285, which is not very good. All right, let's recap everything that just happened. Step number 1, we write down what we're comparing. All right, alongside with that, we write down the ratio of everything that was given, and we start building this equivalent fraction with the other information that's given to us. Step number 2, we multiply. Step number 3, we divide. Always in that order. Write down the equivalent fractions. We cross multiply. All right, 40x, and we make those things equal to each other. 40x is equal to 190 times 60. 40x equals to 190 times 60, which is 11,400. And lastly, we divide. Always in that order. Write it down, multiply, divide. Write down the ratios, cross multiply, divide by the number next to the letter. And that's how we're going to do each one of these problems, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, by way of example, let's look at the next one. Let us look at the next one, and then we'll work out some of these other ones. Number 2, if 2 pounds of meat serve 5 people, how many pounds, we don't know the many pounds, how many pounds will be needed to serve 13 people? So obviously, what are the 2 things that I'm working with here? Well, it seems to me that I'm working with pounds of meat, pounds, and people. Notice no math involved. I just literally wrote down in words the 2 things I'm comparing. All right, so what is the relationship between pounds and people? Well, it says 2 pounds necessary for 5 people. Very good. Let's look, is there any other information regarding pounds or people? Well, there's 13 people, so people, it's going to go in the denominator, people. 13 people, and how many pounds? Pounds, we don't know how many pounds. Step number 2, ladies and gentlemen, now that I wrote it down, we multiply. So we're going to build an equation where we're going to cross multiply. So 5x will go on one side, 5 times x. And on the other, we have 13 times 2, which is 26. 13 times 2 is 26. Final step, we divide by the number next to the letter. Here's the letter, so we're going to divide by 5. Whatever I do to one side, we must do to the other. So my answer will be, or x will be, whatever 26 divided by 5 is. Okay, 26 divided into 5 parts. 5 cannot go into 2, but it goes into 26. 5 times 5 is 25. Remainder 1. No remainders in middle school. If to continue, since there's nothing left, we put a decimal and bring down a 0. 5 times 2 is equal to 10. So that means that my answer is 5.2. Or that means that we need 5.2 pounds, or 5 2/10 pounds, to feed 13 people. That's what that means. That is going to be the same process for each one of these problems. We'll do another one in a second. But before I do that, some of you guys, I know, are having trouble dividing and then continuing after the remainder. Continuing so that you have an exact answer with a decimal. If that is the case, ladies and gentlemen, if that is the case, all right, I'm going to move on from here. Remember, we wrote down the ratios, ratio in words. We wrote down the ratio of pounds per people, and we wrote down a ratio where we don't know how many pounds for 13 people. Okay, notice no math involved right here. All right, I just wrote it, I just translated this into this, and then I cross multiplied, which is all right here. We cross multiplied, and then we divided by the number next to the letter. That's how I got the answer. But anyways, again, if you're struggling with dividing, so that you don't have a remainder, so that you can have an exact answer in decimals, what you must do is go to Schoology, go to the main page, scroll down to the resources page, and right there, dividing without remainders. You must watch that video. In fact, I recommend you watch both of these. It is very important that you know how to divide without getting any remainders, so you have a decimal answer. Otherwise, you are going to struggle a lot going forward in this class. All right, let's do one more, and then we will be done. Or I'll let you go in. Sorry, give me 1 second. There we go. All right, so we did 1, we did 2. Why don't we do 4? Okay, you can do 3 on your own. Just on 3, a side note, the 2 variables are the hole, which is 3 feet deep, the hole that is 3 feet deep. So you can write either deep or hole in 5 feet high tree. All right, so some people would do hole over tree or deep over tree. But anyways, let's go to number 4. A certain shade of green paint is made from 5 parts yellow and 3 parts blue. If 2 cans of yellow are used, how many cans of blue should you use? Well, what's important here? Well, they tell me 5 what? 5 is yellow and 3 is blue. So it's yellow and blue. Nothing about the green. Don't worry about the green. So we're comparing yellow to blue. Yellow to blue. 5 yellow for every 3 blue. If 2 cans of yellow are used, how many cans of blue do we need? Okay, 2 cans of yellow, how many blue do we need? Yellow and blue are what we're comparing. 5 parts yellow, 3 parts blue, 5 and 3. 2 cans yellow, 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 yellow. How many are blue? All right, next step. Let us go ahead and now that we have our ratios, let's go ahead and cross multiply. So let's make an equation. 3 times 2 is going to be on one side. 3 times 2 is 6. 5x on the other. 5x. Last step, ladies and gentlemen. So we just multiplied. So we wrote it down. We multiplied. Now we divide by the number next to the letter. Here's the letter. So we divide by 5. So my answer is going to be whatever 6 divided by 5 is. So x equals to 6 divided by 5. 5 goes into 6 one time. Remainder of 1. To continue, we put a decimal, bring down a 0. 5 goes into 10 twice. Ladies and gentlemen, if we have 2 cans of yellow, we need 1 and 2/10 cans of blue to make the green shade. It is the exact same process for all of these, ladies and gentlemen. You always write down the fraction in words. You always write down the ratio that is given to you, and then you start building the second ratio with whatever other information you have. Make sure that it's lined up in the right spot. Hopefully you found this video helpful, ladies and gentlemen, and with that in mind, I will see you next time.